I still believe in the projections are there in the fully automated dark warehouse, right? I still think there's a place for that. And that's absolutely in our future, sooner than we think, just based on the breakneck speed with which technology is changing and improving. I think really the impediment to that right now is that predictability factor.
The Industrial Sage Executive Series, sharing the stories behind game-changing executives, their organizations, and insights into today's industry challenges.
Well, hello and welcome to today's Industrial Sage Executive Series. I am joined by Chad Zullman, who is the Chief Sales Officer at TGW Logistics. Chad, thank you so much for joining me today on the Executive Series.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I'm excited to get into our conversation. So we were just talking before, you are in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and it's very warm up there right now, right?
Absolutely, it's swimsuit weather for sure.
Excellent. Well, before we get into the first part, which I love, is getting into learning more about you personally. But for those who aren't familiar with TGW, just can you give me a little high level about who you guys are and what you do?
Sure. So TGW is a global systems integrator for our customers. We focus on our core industries, which would be fashion and apparel, grocery, and industrial and consumer goods. So we actually design, implement, maintain highly automated fulfillment centers inside for various customers in various regions. And that's not only in North America, like I said, we're globally. So what's unique from a TGW standpoint, I think, is we have manufacturing that sits in Austria and Germany. So we have on top of your traditional conveyor, your automated storage and retrieval systems that we manufacture. We also have a robotics company as well. So palletizing, depalletizing, automated picking solutions, et cetera, all within our realm and sphere that we offer to our customers.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like quite a nice footprint. So the manufacturing and the integration side, kind of bring engineered solutions, bringing all that together.
That's right.
Excellent. So we'll get more into that because I think there's a little bit of interesting stuff going on with supply chain right now, and as we get into fulfillment and e-com and retail and all these things, I think I'm suspecting you've been affected by this a little bit. So I'm being a little facetious, obviously, but let's jump into you a little bit here. How did you kind of start your journey? How did you get into this space?
So clearly through my college courses, because I have an economics degree.
Okay.
But actually I came in through a family friend. So he got me into the automotive supply chain area. So it was in the 3PL industry. So I actually started in one of the initial lead logistics operations for General Motors and working for Ryder. And so that was more transportation based. So really optimized transportation design and execution. Then that particular solution morphed into just-in-time delivery. And that's where the warehousing portion came in. So really started working on, from a design perspective, warehouse layouts and effective solutions for just-in-time delivery, and then made my way through the 3PL industry. So I worked for another organization, CEVA, for about 19 years or almost 20 years in various capacities. But eventually that led me to where I am today with TGW, because the more the supply chain industry evolved, while the 3PLs were providing excellent solutions, and there's a lot of benefit to operations excellence and lean practices, we had more and more customers asking for ways to reduce their headcount. So really looking into automation. And the more my team kept working on these solutions for these large customers, the more we saw the need, the want, the desire to understand more about automation. And that really led to the interest from my standpoint into the automation, and TGW reached out to me. So it was perfect timing and worked out really well.
Excellent. And so when did you start at TGW?
4 years ago.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Yeah. So 2018. All right. So I think I can do math. It's one of the things I forgot with the pandemic. So, well, cool. All right. So I'm curious. So you said economics degree, and then now you found yourself going into supply chain and operations excellence and all. What you said you came in through a friend. I'm just curious, initially, what did that look like for you? What specifically were you doing in that job? And then at what point were you like, hey, I kind of like this?
So I started outside of an internship. I actually started managing in a warehouse, first shift operation for container sortation, so returnable containers for the automotive assembly plants. After about a year of that, I worked my way into the design team though. So that was more transportation optimization. So essentially taking all the suppliers that you'd normally work with and building out your daily milk runs, your weekly milk runs, and then working through our team, who at the time actually provided the transportation services, as well as third parties who did truckload provision, longer hauls, and then the assembly plants themselves to coordinate the activities from a part standpoint, inventory standpoint, et cetera. So it really started, honestly, purely on the transportation side. And that evolved from a single plant to multiple plants and looking at synergies, right, et cetera. So it was an interesting start. And the hook for me was just the logic. I mean, it just made a lot of sense. The concepts that, the automotive industry was trying to apply, and really they were the front runners, I think, in the supply chain and really that lead logistics provision work. And so being able to see its impact on the plants themselves, the transportation budget, quite frankly. And then as it worked its way into more of the just-in-time delivery and the warehousing solutions, you could just really see the benefit and you could understand it. It just made a lot of sense. And I always enjoyed it. I mean, honestly, when I moved away from Ryder into CEVA, it was more on the sales side initially in design, but I got to see more and more customers. So suddenly you see similar problems across customers, across industries, and every problem was new, but at the same time you had the confidence to really work with the customer to solve it. And I think that was the hook, right? You felt that you brought value to the table, and you felt like there was a high amount of demand for what you were providing. And so I really enjoyed that aspect.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's an interesting, transition over from more operationally engineering over to sales. What did that look like in terms of, hey, we approach, hey, we think, this would be a good opportunity for you to sell this. Like, well, wait, I don't know. What was that for you?
So my initial transition from Ryder to, at the time it was TNT Logistics, but eventually made its way to CEVA that's known today, was just on the design side. And then a few years in, after leading their design team, I was asked to commit to the dark side and move into sales. But
you said it, not me.
I think it's honestly, it's an easy transition when you talk about the detail and the complexity of the designs, because it is primarily engineering driven, right, and solution driven. So as a participant in that sales process, it was just natural, really, from moving from an engineering leadership standpoint over into a sales position. It was an easy transition. I'm a competitor at heart. I love it. So getting into the sales side was fantastic for me. It was perfect and aligned with exactly where I wanted to be at the time, which was great.
No, that's awesome. I love it. Yeah, you mentioned, I mean, it's such a technical sale. It's very consultative, and it makes sense. You mentioned before a little bit, really bringing value to customers. And I think that's where, obviously people, you talk about the dark side sales, whatever, right? I don't want to be the sales guy that's always pushing this or that or whatever. But the reality of it is, when you really do have a solution that fits and you do have a customer that that you can really help solve their challenge, that is fantastic. Where it gets difficult is when that customer doesn't know they have that problem that needs to be. That's where that can be a little challenging.
Absolutely. Sounds like you've been in sales.
Never. I've never done sales ever. I do love sales. I think it's a lot of fun for those exact reasons you kind of brought up. Just when you can solve a real tangible problem for a customer or client. That gets me excited when they say, "Wow, this is awesome! Look at this. This is great."
It does, and I mean, realistically, in our industry right now, these are large numbers, right? We're not talking small investments. I mean, we're talking material investments that, in some instances, are really career changing for individuals making those decisions, and they don't take them lightly. So, from our standpoint, when you talk about sales cycles, 9 months, a year, in some cases, well beyond that. Both parties are making a big commitment to each other. And so I think you kind of said it. It's a mutual victory at that point, right? When you see the value and the customer sees the value and you're really able to, reach an agreement at the end of the day, everyone's happy about it, right? You're not really selling at that point. You want to be an advocate for change. And that's really what the team is really happy about. What I enjoy, right, is really working through just, I'm selling something to someone. It's a solution that'll make their business better, that'll improve, overall their company's health, improve their personal careers as well. I think it's fantastic.
Absolutely. No, it's exciting. I love it. I love it. So, over your career, tell me about somebody who's had like a big impact. I know there's probably a lot, right? When I ask, most people are like, oh, well, there's so many. But, tell me about one, that has had a big impact and why.
Sure. And we talked a little bit about it beforehand. I think in preparation, I had, 7 names, right, ready to go, and, past mom and dad and past other people. But in all honesty, from a true career standpoint, I think the one person who is absolutely pivotal is Dick Jennings. He was the family friend that brought me into the 3PL industry and into supply chain right away. And he really just had a unique perspective that resonated with me. I think his background was psychology, to be honest with you. And he made his way into operations and, led really dynamic and fun teams. And I saw that what he could do, not only from a building standpoint, because he brought in great people for their just different roles and different functional areas, but just how he built that team dynamic and how he handled them as a leader and how he was revered by everybody as a leader, really shaped the way of what I thought a leader should be, right? Because you have that mindset and you're 21 years old, whatever you are at the time, and you say, boy, I want to be like that. I want to be someone that inspires people, and yet he can absolutely relate to everybody on the team. And he was fantastic. He really set me on the right path of where I'm at today. I mean, outside of that, I'd probably be working for a bank somewhere, but I'm really blessed and grateful. He really had a huge impact on my direction for my career. And then obviously personally, its impact from there.
That's awesome. So you mentioned, leadership obviously was a big aspect of that. What are some of those lessons that you've learned from him, from Dick, from just, what, maybe 5-10 years ago? You look very young. And so,
you are in sales. It's official now. You are officially in sales. Well done. Well done.
Well, I come by it honestly. So, what are some of those learnings that you apply today?
I think with Dick, he knew how to balance humor with the seriousness of the job, right? Specifically in the automotive industry, minutes equal dollars, right? There's penalties associated with that when you're running your business. And he understood how to take the gravity of the business and balance that with a good atmosphere for people to thrive. And that really, like I said, it really resonated with me on how he handled that. He knew the time to turn up a little bit of the heat, and he knew the time when to let people blow off some steam. And I think just recognizing that at a young age for me, I said, this is an environment where I would prosper, right? And having seen different environments now throughout my career, I really respected that about him and what he could do. And as much as I try to do it, I'm sure I can't exactly replicate that, but I think it's important, just that balance of humor and life with the gravity of the business, right? When we're out selling deals at over $100 million, that's a lot for people to be a part of. It's pressure regardless when you're in sales, right? And it's pressure for our customers, but balancing the human side of it, the relationships, I think is really important. And I really drew from that. I think I still think about it regularly.
That's awesome. No, I love it. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, yeah. Obviously, ton of stress involved with these decisions because, as you mentioned, I mean, these can alter careers and alter the massive trajectory of businesses. And let's talk about that a little bit right now, as far as like challenges that are going on in the industry. Obviously, everything has been completely shaken up over the last 2 years. There was a lot of movement and a lot of activity moving into automation, going into these solutions. You're mentioning how you guys are. You've got a robotics division. I mean, a lot of this was hot beforehand. E-com fulfillment was hot beforehand. And then the pandemic happened, and it was like somebody just threw a can of gasoline on the fire.
Right.
What are some of these impacts that you're seeing that you guys have experienced over the last 2 years? And yeah, what's your experience like?
I mean, from our standpoint, like you said, the pandemic's really been an accelerant. I mean, we have just seen the projections from a 10-year basis shrink down to 2 and 3 years. And everyone's scrambling to make decisions and accommodate. So I think initially through the pandemic, we really saw that push to say, what can we do? And if you think about it from our standpoint, I mean, again, I mentioned earlier, the sales cycles can be 9 months plus, and then the actual implementation, we call it realization here, but the realization cycle can be 18 months. I mean, there's a significant lead time for those changes to take place. So really educating customers as much as possible, working with them as much as possible, to better understand their business, because we're forecasting for 5 years out, 4 years out, whatever it may be, for future capacity and demands. And our customers were scrambling to come up with models that suggested what either through the pandemic and post-pandemic things would look like. And that's really been the challenge. I mean, more recently, I would say, so that's probably the first 2 years. More recently, I would say it's, the problem still exists, period, but it's more on the supply chain side.
Yeah.
Will I see that continued volume through my warehouses and what I have in my distribution nodes? And will the demand be there for the customers? So it's really interesting just to see how it's evolved, even by COVID standards, right, over the past 2 years, and how the customers are trying to balance that out with future projections. Because what we're dealing with, honestly, are strategic decisions that are being made, and it's made it very difficult and very difficult to predict.
Yeah, it's almost like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube, because it seems interesting, looking at customer behavior. You mentioned, I think you said grocery, retail, fashion, apparel, those are big industries. Looking at consumer behavior and how that, obviously that's going to come downstream to affect you guys. And there was a report that I heard. There's a local, consumer expert. I think he's nationally syndicated, but Clark Howard, the consumer advocate, looking, for value and whatnot. And when you're looking at all the inflation that's going on right now, people are looking for cheaper solutions and whatnot. And one of the things that he brought in, which I thought was interesting, was that he was pointing out that certain big box online retailers that people are looking at from a pricing standpoint, they're saying, actually, we're paying a little bit more of a premium doing that. And he's starting to see that people are starting to go back into stores, to shop there, versus saying, hey, I'm going to have delivery. This is something that I just heard maybe a week or so ago, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is crazy, because we were this whole shift of, all right, we're online delivery everything, and you're seeing all the retailers, all right, we've got our curbside, we've got this, and then okay, no, actually forget that. Now people are gonna go back into the store, and it's let's talk about micro fulfillment for a minute. Like, oh my gosh, so those challenges changing. And then you mentioned the supply chain piece. I imagine that you guys have not been immune from that operationally, from your own standpoint, saying, hey, just raw materials, getting that in to manufacture. I'm sure if you're like anybody else that we've talked to, orders coming in, companies saying, we need to put these solutions in now. And you're like, well, I'm waiting on all this steel or whatever to come in. And, it's craziness as you had that experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, listen, we're not immune from our side. I think our team's done a fantastic job, really, of trying to plan out, really, for those long lead time components and those components that are critical to our success and what we're trying to accomplish. So we've been very fortunate. I will say that, very fortunate. But it's an hourly, daily job, right?
Yeah.
And the best we can do is keep our customers informed. There's no doubt when you say supply chain today, everybody knows what that means, versus when I started my career, no one knew what supply chain really meant in logistics, but now it's such common to our nomenclature and what we're saying and what we're doing on a daily basis. We hear it in the news about everything from what we buy to how it impacts our business. But again, it's dealing with the challenges. It's head on, making as many plans as you can, working your partnerships as strongly as possible. So that you can make your way through, and setting the right expectations. I think that's clear. I mean, from our standpoint, I feel like we're a little more predictable probably than our customers have it. Like you said, there's so many options out there, and it's so difficult to say this is what our business will look like in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I spoke to a customer recently, and they had projections from 2019 that said by 2022, it's an absolute decision point. And after reevaluating over the last 6 months, that decision point's been pushed off, 5, 6 years based on the projections. So it's extremely dynamic right now, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think everybody is just trying to level set. And that's what I do appreciate. I think in conversations with customers, with our suppliers, with our trading partners, we're having very open dialogue about what timelines look like. And I think that's been the benefit across all of this, very open, honest communication, probably.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that was a lot of challenge that was happening, a lot of education that was going on too. I think earlier on you're mentioning that the whole idea of like supply chain and logistics, like that was, people didn't really necessarily know exactly what that meant or what were the nuances. Now there are supply chain experts everywhere. I'm sure if you had a Thanksgiving, you ran into a lot of supply chain experts as well. But Thanksgiving, the holidays, whatnot. But one of the things that I found fascinating was that even like on the C-suite, I was hearing stories that at the height of the pandemic, that there was a lot of confusion, even just internally, like why can't we move this? Why do we have all these holdups? And it was all this internal education, like, well, there's this thing called supply chain, and we can't get our things in, so we can make the things, so we can ship them out. It was this what? One of the things that I'm curious about is where do you think the industry is going, like
Sure.
forward, learning from what we've still kind of going through, very much so, and what we've learned?
Sure. I still believe in the projections are there in the fully automated dark warehouse, right? I still think there's a place for that. And that's absolutely in our future, sooner than we think, just based on the breakneck speed with which technology is changing and improving. I think really the impediment to that right now is that predictability factor in really seeing what the pandemic will bring. Is this midterm, long term? I think there's a hesitation probably in the marketplace, on getting there right now. But at the end of the day, I think the way technology is improving, the way we are recognizing data as an absolute tool to run business, the way we are becoming more and more comfortable with automation within just various warehouses and warehousing applications, it's absolutely where we're headed. So I think the industry as a whole is going to head right where we think it's going to, with the growth rates. I think there just might be a little bit of hesitation to understand, okay, how do we invest? How do we get there? And how can we make sure that technology is reliable enough and flexible enough for our needs?
Yeah.
Hopefully, COVID will be a little bit of a blip and we'll have some more consistency post-COVID with regards to consumer behavior and our supply chains, et cetera. But depends on who you listen to. This could last many, many years, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who knows, right? One thing you mentioned, obviously, predictability. And earlier in the conversation, you were talking about when you were specifically GM and with Ryder, you were talking about just in time at that point. We get into a little bit of lean manufacturing and whatnot. Are you seeing well, obviously everyone has had a pullback in that naturally, because if you don't have your things, okay, well then you're seeing massive disruption there. But going forward, do you think that there's maybe going to be some rethinking on that? That maybe have we gone a little too far? Is there maybe a little bit of a pullback? Curious.
I think at the root of it, we talk about this quite a bit, right? In the impact to our business. At the core of the issue is the labor market and the scarcity, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unemployment levels lower than pre-pandemic periods, right? The aging workforce is not changing. It's difficult to find people for peak. It's difficult to find them for daily operations. I usually have conversations with our customers and, prospective and existing. And I ask them, well, how are you, related to the overall staffing? And the numbers come back between 80 and 90%. So if you figure businesses on average are only staffed to 85% of where they need to be, and this is just in their distribution nodes, this is just in their warehouses, that labor is in demand. And the need for automation just grows. So I see the need and demand to be there, absolutely 100%, because I don't see the labor market and the labor pool changing anytime soon. I mean, immigration is down. You look at the aging workforce. You look at the jobs available to everybody right now. It's a ridiculous amount of the Great Resignation with 40% of the workforce turning over. I mean, people are looking, they're seeing different options, and even through peak season, you see the signs going up offering 20, 30, 40% premiums for these jobs. So I think that's going to be the driving factor and will continue to be the driving factor. Yes, there may be some hesitance to say my supply chain costs are greatly increased because of the scarcity of drivers, because of the scarcity of ocean containers, because of the supply chains are being impeded. But at the end of the day, I think the demand will continue to be there in some way, shape, or form, and the warehouses just aren't staffed enough to support that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm curious relative to your peers. What are you guys doing to stay ahead? Sharpen that axe, if you will.
Yeah, I think the robotics company was purchased quite a few years ago, and I think utilizing them as an asset more and more in our solutions has been very advantageous for us. I mean, we explore strategic partnerships. I mean, technology changing so fast. Our core is in manufacturing, and so what we produce today is absolutely our strength. But we also recognize we have to continue to look in the marketplace, and we have to continue to look with other trading partners to see what's out there. AMRs, for example, other things. So, from our perspective, it's keeping your eye on innovation of what you have, but also recognizing that we have a core competence and maybe we can partner with others in the industry. I think, more tactically what we're doing, honestly, in North America, I'll use some examples. I mean, we have our own apprentice program that we're utilizing to develop and retain talent, right? And I think that's really important. Globally, we have our own training academy. Again, talking about developing leaders inside the organization and our employees overall. I mean, it's really about that retention and what we're trying to do to ensure that we have the right baseline for future growth. I mean, we talk about, sky's the limit in the material handling industry, and the projections long term are extremely high. For us, we have to continue to retain talent to stay ahead of our competition. We have to keep those folks who have experience inside our ranks and develop the individuals to be able to support that growth in the future. That foundation is clearly important for our success. And I'd stack that up as a key component to our ability to compete against anybody, in addition to any other technology advancement, et cetera, right? I think the people are going to be one of the most important factors.
Oh, absolutely. I think you're 100% right. I think you're seeing a lot of companies that are struggling with that. Just across the board, right? You mentioned the Great Resignation there earlier. A lot of people just shifting. I mean, there's a lot of things going on right now. But I think I love how you said you have an apprenticeship program you've got going on, and then also global training centers. I think that's absolutely the key to help keep people engaged and to help them to continuously grow and be able to have that advancement. I think that's fantastic. So I'm going to pivot real quick as we start to kind of, we're starting to wrap a little bit. I'm curious, Are you a book reader? Do you do any book reading?
I do read books. Absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
That is good. But I'm going to be clear, book reading versus audio podcast listening.
It's both.
Okay,
both.
Good.
I mean, it's perfect 50-50. I mean,
Awesome.
I spend hours a day on Industrial Sage. So.
Oh, that's the right answer. Perfect. All right. So we'll move on. No. So I'm curious. So what we got a top book that you're reading right now or listening to?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, literally just wrapping it up. It's The Power of Stay interviews. So when we talk about retention of our employees and what we're doing, we're really looking at that as an executive team and what it means to really work with our employees on a regular basis to understand how they are personally, what their opinions are of the industry, of the organization and their needs. And really that's what it's about right now. So that's the most recent book I have on my nightstand.
That's cool. So The Power of Staying, is that?
Yep. It's the power. And I think I wrote it down here. It's The Power of Stay interviews for engagement and retention.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
I haven't heard of that. And there's like 5 people I'm going to send that to right now because everyone's looking for
the
the
author
same.
is Richard Finnegan if you need it. So.
Oh, very cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So since we talked about podcasts or audio, all right, what's your number one podcast? And outside of Industrial Sage, I know.
Listen, I'm all over the map. Honestly, I'm all over the map. Mostly sports, I would say. Just that's more for me personally. Is just
that's perfect. What sports? What are the sports?
Everything. I mean, everything. So right now, college basketball, NFL that just wrapped up, college football, and I'll listen to pretty much anything I can get my hands on. I can't name one specifically that I would say is my go-to, but I just plug in and go.
If you're looking for an
Whatever.
apology for the Georgia-Michigan game, you're not going to get one here. Sorry. So I'm just, no.
You're breaking up.
Oh yeah, what? You can't. Okay, yeah. No. Anyways, yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, cool. And last question, just curious as we wrap on this. Top hobby. What when you're not you're solving the world's problems, what's your top hobby?
Outside of my 3 kids, I love to fish. I love to be up at our lake. We got a lake house. It's awesome. Just love to be outdoors, and I personally love to fish. Just get out there and relax. I didn't say catch. I just said fish.
That's a good distinction.
So,
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So just to sit on the water and relax and enjoy, unwind is my number one. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it.
That's awesome. I love that too. Yes, I enjoy fishing. I'm not very good at catching. So, but
It's
that's
okay. You have good company here. You have good company.
Awesome. Well, excellent. Well, Chad, listen, I've really enjoyed our conversation and learning more, about you and learning more about, TGW, what you guys do. Thank you so much for coming onto the show here. So I've got, if anyone who wants to learn more about what you guys do, I've got the website here, tgw-group.com.
Yep.
And, yeah, I encourage anybody that wants to learn more to go
Absolutely.
go there, right?
Absolutely. Give us a call. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This was great.
No, this is awesome. I enjoyed it as well. And thanks for sharing some of your insights with me and our audience.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that wraps up today's Industrial Sage Executive Series interview with TGW Logistics. And I really enjoyed my conversation with Chad, and I hope you did as well. If you're not subscribed, I highly recommend you go and get on the subscription list, because we're sending out content like this on a weekly basis. So you're missing out on great conversations and learnings and happenings that are going on in the industry. Maybe not be directly in your industry, but still a lot to learn. So that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back next week with another episode on Industrial Sage.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Get notified every time there's a new episode by signing up for our email newsletters. You can also subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, please leave us a review so more industrial professionals can find us. Want us to tell your story? Go to industrialsage.com. This week's episode was produced by Rico Wiersma, filmed and edited by Optimum Productions, and our executive producer is Danny Gonzalez. Thank you for watching Industrial Sage.